And anyway, thank you for inviting me here. And I want to assure you that even though the times I've done something similar to this, one in Missouri where my dad invited me to his congregation, and one in Arkansas where my wife's father invited me to their congregation, and one here where my son's father-in-law invited me to his congregation. There is no nepotism involved in this. Because I did one in Zephyr Hills where I didn't know anyone, Florida. No, I appreciate the opportunity to speak about these things, and I think they're important things, and I hope that the ideas that I share with you today are going to be helpful to you in some small way. How to improve our singing is what we've been talking about, learning to effectively communicate our hearts and our minds to God and each other through song. And so, I've put these two words together, improvement and growth, and I just said it this way: improvement is growth. Growing, as you know, takes time and energy in all sorts of ways. Improving our health requires exercise and diet. Have any of you ever tried to improve your health by exercise and diet? Is that easy, or is it difficult? Does it take time, or is it kind of an overnight thing, like in the commercials that come on late at night? Take a pill and it fixes everything. Or if you want to improve your financial situation, does that require discipline, restraint, and work? Or is there kind of a fix it right now way to do that? We all know that, right? We have to grow. And improving our spiritual life is a growing process as well. It's why we spend so much time reading and studying and listening to others talk to us about Christ and how we should be. We learn more about what God has to say to us and how we're supposed to treat each other, how to communicate with each other. And we get good at this, we get good at communicating with each other about all sorts of things. And the way that we say things matters. And this is what we want to improve at. If you're married and you're trying to improve the way you communicate with each other, you know it matters how you say things. For example, if I say to my wife, "Hey, what are we having for dinner?" And she says, "Well, we're having spinach with walnuts on it and some kale and then some pumpkin seeds." And I say, "Great." That means one thing. And if I say great, that means another thing, right? It's the same word, but we use a different inflection. And then I can say, or I might say, "Honey, we're going out tonight." That might be a way to fix that particular problem, but I'm taking you out. But that's the idea. We get really good at communicating with each other, and we get a sense about how somebody feels by the way that they express, even if it's the same word. And so improvement is growth in this. You want to improve the way you communicate with your spouse, with each other, and with other. 1 Peter 2:2 says, "As newborn babes, we desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby." Ephesians 4:14 and 16, "That we henceforth be no more children, tossed to and fro, and carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lay in wait to deceive. But speaking the truth in love, may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body fitted jointly together, and compacted by which every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working in the measure of every part, maketh increase of the body unto the edifying of itself." And that's what we do through our singing. We can edify through our singing in part, in addition to the other things that we do. And 2 Peter 3:18, "But grow in grace and the knowledge of our Lord Jesus and Savior Jesus Christ." All these ideas about growth, we know that we have to grow spiritually. And by improving our singing a little bit, maybe we can enhance that particular growth to subsidize it, if you would. So how do we do that? How do we improve our singing? Singing from the heart and doing the best to sound good do not need to be competing ideas. It's not necessary. We said this morning in class that we can do both of these things at the same time. it's okay to do them together. And then when we see a need in any area of our lives that we can improve and we desire improvement in that area, we generally make a determined, sustained effort to fulfill it. If you've ever wanted something, a car that you couldn't afford, maybe you took an extra job, or maybe you saved your money, or you scrimped on something else so that you could get what you wanted in that area. And so we all do this in certain areas. If you want it, you'll do it. And then we define the problem and develop and implement solutions. I imagine a lot of you in your careers are problem solvers. I met once in the hospital when one of our children was being born, up an elevator where they were doing construction at St. Joseph's Hospital. A lady who was dressed in a suit, and I could tell she was a CEO, a manager, somebody that was in charge of something. She was in charge. And I said, how's it going? And she said, I'm putting out fires, which means she's problem solving on the site constantly. And that's what you have to have somebody do and troubleshoot. And we do. We all are problem solvers in different ways. And so what we want to do, and anytime we approach a problem, identify what is the problem. We have to know what that is, and we have to agree on what that is. In a relationship, we do this for sure. If one spouse thinks the problem is this, and one spouse thinks the problem is this, we have difficulty coming to solve that problem. But if both spouses look at the problem together and say, oh, okay, we've identified what this is, now how are we going to go about? So improving our singing would necessitate, not that it's a problem, but identifying what it is specifically that we want to improve about it. And that's what I want to help with a little bit. One thing that we can do when we're together is avoid the unnecessary distractions. Paul encouraged the Corinthians to be conscious of order and propriety. 1 Corinthians 14:40 says, let all things be done decently and in order. And we do that. We discussed that in Bible class this morning, that we have even these slides to help order what it is that we do. 1 Corinthians 14:31, prophesy one by one that all may learn and be encouraged. So back then, they would, even with the gifts of the Spirit, they would have trouble making sure that everything was done in order, that it would be edifying to everyone. If they let it get out of control, then it would be even more problematic. They might as well have not had the gift. We keep silent during teaching and prayer so we can understand and be encouraged. We let one person speak at a time. We take screaming children out of the assembly so others will not be distracted. I think Tip's mentioned several times you all have a cry room. And I assume that's not for the adults. I assume that's for the children to utilize. And so we understand that. We avoid loud or immodest apparel in the assembly. Anything that we could do that might be too distracting to others. Or sometimes when you pray, we close our eyes or we bow our heads in prayer. And this is just one simple thing that we can do to make our prayer more effective to ourselves, so we can concentrate and focus on God. And other avoidable distractions that we have, things that are easy. We don't necessarily have to improve our singing, we just have to not sabotage it, is one way to think of it. It's unnecessary to make it worse or make it more difficult to sing to God. And so some of the things we can do. Long songs tend to let the mind wander when sung too slowly. We generally have short attention spans. And the advertisers know it, right? When they put a commercial on television, how long is that commercial? How long can they hold our attention before we'll walk away? Not very long, for sure, but they've got it down to a science, and they study this all the time to see exactly how. And they're careful about the content of the commercial, too, to see if they can hold our attention. And this is true. You've seen the Klondike commercial, the ice cream bar, I guess it is, where the husband is sitting on the couch watching TV or doing something, and the wife comes in the room, and then the announcer says, how long could you listen to your spouse for a Klondike bar? And so the guy concentrates really hard, and it's like 5 seconds or whatever, and she starts talking, and then a bell rings after 5 seconds or something, ding, 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 and he did it. He's like, 5 seconds I listened to the conversation, and he gets his Klondike bar. We do have short attention spans, and so sometimes a long song, if it's just too long, we lose everyone. We lose everyone. And again, if we sing too slowly or too quickly, this becomes problematic. Starting off on the wrong pitch will eliminate some from participating comfortably. I want to use a couple of examples this morning and just talk about so that you can identify some of these points that I'm making and make them a little more practical and a little more real. If you don't mind, if you would look in your Psalms and Hymns and Spiritual Songs book for just a second and turn to number 145. Do, so, do. Let's sing together. There is a name I love to hear, I love to sing its worth. It sounds like music in mine ear, the sweetest name on earth. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me. Now, for some of you in the room, that was quite comfortable. For others of you in the room, that was very uncomfortable. And if you didn't notice, the bass line was left out almost altogether. And so that's what I mean by an avoidable distraction. I purposely pitched the song a step and a half or 2 steps too low so that we could identify that what's comfortable for some may not be comfortable for others. So simply by avoiding the distraction of starting on the wrong pitch, if I pitch it correctly, let's sing the first verse again, if you would. Do, do, mi. There is a name I love to hear, I love to sing its word. It sounds like music in my ear, the sweetest name on earth. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus, because he first loved me. And then it's better where everybody can participate. And I think that's important. If we're all commanded to sing together, we need to create a situation to where everybody can participate in that singing comfortably. And because it's designed, our songbooks are designed for 4 parts, we need to accommodate all 4 of those parts if we're going to use these books and sing 4-part harmony. We also have distractions too. Someone who will not conform or adjust to the group. Maybe sometimes there'll be somebody who's very, very loud. And this becomes difficult, doesn't it? Because in one way, are they singing from the heart? It would be hard to argue against that or judge against that. At the same time, is it edifying to the other people? Now we could start to make an argument there. Or is it distracting? And that's where a congregation would have to decide that together. If somebody, when I was growing up, we had an older lady who was an alto, and every song, without fail, the song leader would cut off at the end of the song, and then you would hear her sing for about 3 more beats, the end of the song, after everyone. She did a solo at the end of every song. This is a large congregation. And it's difficult in that situation, right? Because she's definitely pouring her heart out. She was all in her singing. And so that's a good thing. And yet at the same time, we have a little bit of a distraction going on there, and how to deal with that. And it becomes problematic. But we can all be a little bit self-aware. We can say, am I singing louder than everybody else in the room? And maybe a little bit of conform. Or sometimes someone who sings so softly that you can't hear them, and or somebody who's not singing at all. You ever look around the room and you're singing your heart out, and you look around and somebody's going, it can affect you a little bit. It distracts you. Not that you want to judge what they're thinking. The idea is that you're distracted now. So a lot of that is on us, isn't it? It's on us to just try to make sure that we're focused. But we can help each other focus is the point. And it's avoidable. That distraction is avoidable. Singing the same songs that are too difficult, or singing songs that are too difficult for the group at the present time. If you'll indulge me, I do want to do another example. Look at 251. This is the song I mentioned the other day in a class where I led it at a congregation when I was younger. And it was a large congregation in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I was prepared to tout Fayetteville as the home of the Hogs this morning. However, after yesterday, I'm going to forego that comment and just move right on. But Christ the Lord is risen today. We're just going to sing one verse. Christ the Lord is risen today. Alleluia. Sons of men and angels say, Alleluia. Raise your joys and triumphs high. Alleluia. Sing ye hymns, then earth reply. I feel like it's well written. I feel like it portrays the words well. And it's meaningful to me when I sing it. I feel like I can worship using these songs. I feel like I can express myself through this song. However, I realized as we sang it that many of you in the audience were not comfortable singing this song. Not because you couldn't, you just don't know it. And that was the problem I had in Fayetteville, where I did a solo right there on the stage that morning. And that was a hard lesson to learn. So for us as song leaders and we as congregations, when we're wanting to focus our heart and mind on God, sometimes singing a song that is meaningful to us may not be the best thing for the group. So if I wanted to pick a song that would have the same sort of effect or the same sort of mindset, what if we look at 248? Let's look at number 248, and let's sing one verse of that song together. Do mi soul, low in the grave he lay, Jesus my Savior, waiting the coming day, Jesus my Lord. Up from the grave he arose, triumph for his foes. He arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with the saints to reign. He arose, hallelujah, Christ arose. And I can tell from up here that everybody is more comfortable singing that song than the previous song. And so the lesson would be learned to, depending on where you are and what you're doing, to try to choose the songs that are the least distracting to the group for the song leaders to do. Sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes as song leaders, we have our go-to list and we keep hitting that same list. I don't know if you all have experienced that here, but I've experienced it in almost everywhere I've been. As soon as the song leader gets up, you know exactly what songs are going to be before they ever come up on the screen. So, and that's okay too, depending on where the song leader is. But song leaders, as you grow, you should expand your repertoire, as it were, and learn to lead more songs than the same ones that we just do over and over. Because sometimes we have that lack of variety and a lack of appropriateness to the moment. Many generations are represented in the congregation. We have young and old here who are going to respond different. And some of the songs that you love may not be loved by others in the room. And we have to be aware of that. Not that we can't grow to love a song. That's not the point. The point is where we are at the moment, we can collectively agree on these. So we always try to choose songs that fit the moment or can enhance what it is that we're talking about, what the preacher is getting ready to speak about, or what we're getting ready to do together. And so that's what we do at this moment, where we're going to stop for a moment and partake of the Lord's Supper. And you choose a song that's going to help us focus on that. So we pick songs that are appropriate for the moment, that help us reflect, and we can do that before and after. We can do it as a preparation or a continuation of the thought that are presented. Any way that we want to do it that we feel like helps us focus our energy and our hearts on God. And we do the same for the invitation song. When we get ready, we're presenting the gospel, just like we talked about Friday night, Paul before King Agrippa and other people that he was in front of. I'm fascinated always by that. What does Paul do when he's in front of the greatest rulers of the earth at that time? He tells a simple story, what happened to him and his belief on Christ Jesus. And that is such a simple and such an incredibly powerful message that that's our invitation. That's the idea, that belief and that conviction of the heart that Jesus is who he said he was. And so we pick songs that reflect that. And a few other avoidable distractions to our singing. Sometimes we can't hear the song leader, and that can be distracting. In my line of work, a conductor generally doesn't make noise. Although I must say, when I go to the Florida Orchestra, I'll go sit right down on the front row. I remember we saw a violin concerto with Nadja Salerno Sonnenberg, I guess is who it was, playing. And we go and sit on the front row. And I took my kids when they were little. Drew and Aiden and Anna were there. And we sit right on the front row. And the front row at the Florida Orchestra at the Straz Center, I can literally sit and I can hold on to the front of the stage like this. And the first violinist, I can grab his leg if I want to. That's how close you are. And so the violinist, when she came out, was mortified that there were small children sitting on the front row. And afterwards, they were very good. And afterwards, of course, they were very good. And afterwards, she commented when we met her about how good they were in that concert. Anyway, I told you that story to tell you that the conductor, even though he wasn't singing, he was conducting an orchestra, was very noisy, made lots and lots of noise, lots of air blowing in and out, lots of moaning, things you can't hear in the middle of the auditorium, but if you sit up close. Anyway, we generally don't do that in a congregational setting, even though we could. We generally combine voice leading or movement of the arms. And so not being able to hear a song leaders, if you have a strong voice, to some degree, I think you can use that without being a distraction. And then you have to be careful. Sometimes, have you ever been in a situation where all you can hear is the song leader and it's a bit overpowering? Now, thankfully now, with IT in the back, we have a little control over that, right? But sometimes all we can hear is the song leader. It's a bit too much. So you guys that lead, be aware of how loud or how soft you are. And that can be, and we can avoid those things. And then, so how to improve? Not just how do we not sabotage our singing, but how do we improve it? It's designed to enhance, singing is designed to enhance, meditate on, or express, or otherwise communicate the meaning of the text and how you feel about it to God, to yourself, and to each other. So we got to remember, at least in worship to God, music is the secondary, the text is the primary. It truly is. And so the music should be designed to help the text. We naturally learn to communicate how we feel to each other We've talked about this a little bit the other night, a mama to her baby, and we're good at this. If you ever see a mother with a newborn, they hold the babies close and they look at them in the face and they make faces like this, but they're careful not to be too loud, right? We're gentle. We're aware of that. Or when you hold a small animal, you're gentle with that. And we know how to do that. And the same can be true with the words in the text that we sing. Even the text we sang just now, everybody was really in tune with what the text was saying and how to present that and how to express that effectively, not only for your own benefit, to those of each other. And we use the example of a child whining in Bible class today. We don't teach that, it comes naturally, and we can tap into those things to communicate more effectively, much like a preacher or a teacher develops his skills over time with effort. And the sounds we make talking to each other in everyday life generally reflect our heart. Even though we can't judge the hearts of other men, sometimes we can tell what they're saying. And sometimes we use our voice inflections to make sure they know what we're saying. So we don't have to say it outright. But make sure that we mean what we say when we're singing. Sometimes that requires dedicated effort, and sometimes it comes easily. Sometimes it's easy to be nice. Sometimes it's difficult to be nice. But what should you do? Be nice, right? And so sometimes it's difficult to concentrate on the song we're singing. Sometimes it's easy to concentrate on the song we're singing. Either way, find a way to focus on what it is that you're saying. And it will come out in our singing like it does in our communication. We have an example. Where as much the Lord said, for as much as this people draw near to me with their mouth and their lips, they do honor me, but they have removed their heart far from me. And their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. So no matter what I've said this weekend, we know that still the heart is the most critical element of what we bring to our offering to God. So what can you do? Sing whether you can do it well or not. Only with practice comes improvement. Song leaders, open your heart and your mind to the needs of others. We talked about in the song leading workshop how it's difficult for your song leaders. And so we in the congregation, we can recognize that too. It's kind of personal for people when they get up here and they start singing. They're vulnerable and they feel vulnerable. So then sometimes the comments that we make to them, if they're a little critical, it can be hurtful to the song leader. And at the same time, song leaders, that's part of the process. We have to be open to a little bit of correction, a little bit of criticism. It's better if it comes from within, if you can figure this out by just thinking a little bit, or find a confidant. It's very helpful if you're married, because your spouse has no problem telling you exactly what you did right or wrong when you were leading. Look or listen to the song leader and follow as best you can. That's something we can do in a congregation. Whether they choose to lead it too fast or too slow, once they've made that decision, let's facilitate and help him out in what his effort is so that we can do it together. And keep it simple. If you're choosing songs that are too hard or too new for the occasion, wait till a more appropriate time, or set aside time. And like Tip said, sometimes you'll get together in a home and work on new songs and have in the past. That's the song. It needs to go through that process before it enters into the worship service, so it's not a distraction. That's a great idea and a great way to do that. And then you can do those songs more effectively. Be sensitive to the text. How would you speak the words? And make a determined, sustained effort to grow as individuals. Someone mentioned to me practicing with a pitch pipe this morning, and in the workshop we talked about practicing in front of a mirror, and folks have actually done that, trying to get better at what they do. And that's fantastic. And that's what we do. And as a group, to pay attention to that and the need that you play a role in that as well. And then we just take small and focused steps together. Matthew 25:20, and so he that had received 5 talents came and brought another 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliveredst unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained besides 5 talents more. We can take what God's given us and make it a little bit better. Singing can lift your heart, but it can also lift the hearts of everyone in the room. It's worth the effort if you choose to do a little bit here and there. And I would just want to emphasize, not a lot of these things. Pick something that is beneficial to you or that's beneficial to your group and take those thoughts with you. I want to thank you once again for inviting me here. It's truly been a joy to meet all of you, and it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you to Tip and Ann for your kind hospitality and your beautiful home, and for getting to meet a lot of you. I'm looking forward to getting to visit with a lot more of you soon. Jerome is going to come now and present the invitation.
Appreciate all your hard work and the effort that you put into this and your years of experience bringing them here. I kept on hearing from Jon just a little bit better, And I appreciate that approach. He has a very sensitive approach to a diverse group such as us, and you have helped us, brother. We appreciate you. Thank you. Songs are great. Poetry is great. In fact, a lot of the Bible is poetry, isn't it? Because there's just some things that can be said poetically that prose just won't cut it, right? I want to turn your attention to this passage in 2 Timothy chapter 2. I think I told you chapter 1. Chapter 2. Paul the apostle is in jail. And at this point in Paul's life, he realizes he's not going to make it out. He's going to die for the Lord. And he's writing this heartfelt letter to pass the torch, as it were, to Timothy. And he doesn't want Timothy to be afraid. He wants Timothy to be faithful and endure suffering and share in that suffering, not only with Paul, but with Jesus. Because that's part of what it means to be a Christian, to put your faith and your convictions on the line. He makes a series of arguments in chapter 2. He encourages him to be strengthened by the grace that is in Jesus. He tells him to share in suffering like a good soldier. Have that focus of a soldier. Have that discipline like an athlete. Have that patience like a farmer. And then in verse 8, Jesus, the one who embodies all of this. Be like Jesus. Endure. And he says, just like me, I'm suffering. I'm bound with chains as a criminal. And what a lovely thing he says next, but the word of God is not bound. You can chain up the messenger, but you can't chain up the message. And so Paul, he couldn't travel during this time, but he could write letters like this, and the gospel would go out, and it would get into Timothy's heart, and he would preach it to faithful men, and they would go out and teach, and here it is 2,000 years later, still making an impact. But then Paul quotes something in verse 11. The saying is trustworthy. And he gives this little 4-line poem. Now, he's not quoting from the Old Testament here. He's quoting something, though, and I wonder what that is. Maybe it was some kind of proverb. Could it have been an early Christian hymn that some Christian wrote about Jesus? You can hear the themes in this poem. If we have died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he also will deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. Whether this was a proverb or a hymn, it's certainly poetry, and it would be easy for Christians who were suffering to memorize this, maybe to put it to a song. And if you can imagine in the first century, Christians being forced to kneel down, worship Caesar, this is something that they could remember. This is something that they could mumble to themselves, maybe sing to themselves, pray in their own minds. And Paul is reminding Timothy, where are you in this song? Where are you in this poem? Line 1, if we have died with him, we will also live with him. Notice the word if. And my question to you this morning is, have you died with him? And if the answer is yes, I have died with Jesus, then be comforted. You will live with Jesus. This is, of course, talking about the moment of your conversion, your baptism, right? Isn't that what we signify with this act of baptism, that we are dying? It is no longer I who live, but now Christ who lives within me, and we are raised up to walk in newness of life. That imagery comes again and again in the Bible. And the one who has died figuratively with Jesus may have to die literally for Jesus, but he will live with Jesus because Jesus was raised from the dead. And now that we're raised, spiritually speaking, if we endure those hardships, again, a great comfort. Don't give up, Christian. We will also reign with him. There's future glory. Reigning with Jesus, raised up with Jesus, seated in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. There's great comfort there. But do you see line 3? It's a very sobering warning to Timothy and to us today. There's judgment on the cowardly. Your faith is going to cost you something. Your faith is going to cost you something. If we deny him, we can't expect Jesus now to be our advocate to the Father, right? If we are unwilling to suffer shame and persecution for Jesus, and we deny him, he's going to disown us before the Father. And then the line 4, verse 13, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. In other words, if we lose our faith, that's not going to nullify God's promises. He's still going to do the right thing. He's still going to keep his promises. He's still going to set everything right. So you see the balance here between comfort and warning and exhortation. Where do you see yourself in this little poem? Maybe you haven't died to yourself. Maybe you haven't died with Jesus. And if you haven't, let me encourage you to do that. Do you want to live? You were created to live and not to ultimately die. If you would believe in Jesus, if you would trust him and give your life over to him and then die with him in baptism, and you can be raised with him and be given that eternal life, which only Jesus can give. Have you done that yet? And maybe you are a Christian, but you've been suffering some kind of persecution, maybe at work or in your family, and you've been giving up your faith. You've been giving up your convictions to save face at your job or with your family or with your spouse or whatever it is. Could I encourage you to look at that second line again? If we endure, we will also reign with him. If. Have you died with Jesus? Are you enduring with Jesus? We're going to sing this song, not only as praise to God, but also to invite you to respond to the gospel of Jesus' death, his burial, and his resurrection. If you need to respond, then you can come forward and take a seat. You can help me. Let's sing.